Clyde Council's Audit Committee. This meeting is being held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil a public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with the Council's public policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Do you have any apologies?
Apologies in case might be a case person. I need to recall.
Yes.
All members to indicate that present and today of the person of the plate. Councillor Crowther.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Carnley.
Present remotely.
Councillor McKay.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCormick.
Present remotely.
Councillor McGuire.
Present remotely.
Professor Mackenzie.
In the chamber.
Councillor Nelson.
In chambers.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present remotely.
Are there any declarations of interest?
I will now move on to item number 2, which is internal audit progress report from 31st of July to 29th of September 2023.
Thanks, Chair. So this report sets out the internal audit activity since the last progress update to the committee in August. There were 2 audits finalised since the last meeting, which are set out in section 2 and appendix 1 to the report. In relation to the audit of commercial waste, the audit covered income, billing and collection. The overall control environment opinion was satisfactory. There were 2 amber issues identified, firstly in relation to the timeliness of issuing invoices and identifying unpaid accounts, and also in relation to issuing and publishing appropriate documentation to customers, setting out the contractual relationship. There were 4 issues identified, 2 of which we consider to be individually significant, and an action plan is in place to address all issues by the 30th of April 2024. We also finalised the quarterly checks of corporate appointee client accounts for 2022 to 23. This report focused on those transactions that were processed during February this year. There was 1 amber issue identified in relation to inaccurate transaction records on the corporate appointee client account spreadsheet. The audit identified that this was due to the responsible officer overwriting formula contained within the spreadsheet, resulting in some errors. However, through re-performance, we did not identify any issues with monies missing or unaccounted for. An action plan is in place to address this issue, which will include a review of the process in the longer term. In relation to the audit plan, good progress is being made to complete the plan by the year end. However, in relation to the audit of supplier management, as the new policy has currently been piloted within some services, we've deferred the field work for this audit to the 24-25 audit plan. Instead, we will use the available days within the plan to carry out an audit of procurement compliance, and we're planning that review at the moment. This will assist the Council in its PSIC assessment, which is being carried out concurrently. In relation to the corporate fraud team, the team continues to review matches received through the National Fraud Initiative and responds to other referrals and whistleblowing inquiries. There's an update report on today's agenda regarding the National Fraud Initiative exercise. In relation to internal audit action plans, the progress report is set out at Appendix 2. There were 2 actions due for completion by the 31st of August. 1 action is now complete, and the completion date relating to the other action has been revised. This relates to a refreshed value for money study regarding high mileage claims being undertaken and options identified to reduce mileage where appropriate. To take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from members?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Andy, for the report. These questions are probably more general across the whole piece than than going into any specifics. Just looking at both the two reports that are in this paper and then also ahead to the actions, it seems like there's maybe a common thread here around staffing and investment in terms of IT and the IT that we use to conduct some of these things. And I'm also conscious that looking at the slippage in some of the reports, do we have the adequate resourcing in these areas at the moment? Like, you know, is there an issue with resourcing in terms of staffing for some of these things that is leading to both the slippage in terms of the actions being progressed, but also in a couple of these areas that are identified in the reports that you've just concluded? It does feel like there might be an issue of, you know, it's raised here about suitably trained staff. Do we need to be thinking about investment in the kind of back end?
Okay, so through you, Chair, from an audit perspective, if we felt that there was a control issue as a result of capacity, we would raise that issue. However, in these cases, it's mainly around controls not being performed when they should be or being performed incorrectly. I think in relation to the business support team within HSCP, it's unique circumstances that have led to individuals who potentially haven't had the full training on the client account process. However, the Chief Finance Officer and the Finance Manager are rolling out a programme of refresher training, and that will also tackle the corporate appointee. Also, because there have been a number of changes within staff across the HSCP group. So it's about doing those refresher training programmes, and that's part of the action plan that will go forward for that particular one.
Okay, great, thanks. And just as a follow-up, in terms then of just looking through the action plans, if you exclude the more recent actions from the two reports that are reported today, there's a lot of these where things have slipped. Is there any concern there about staff? You know, is there any particular, you know, cause, or is there anything particular across all of the areas, or is it just specific to each of the individual actions?
Through you, Chair, I think it's competing priorities and just the level of work that other teams have to do in terms of the audit actions that are committed to undertaking these actions, and certainly go to CMT on a regular basis. And there is commitment from from the corporate management team, and I always meet with the service manager that's responsible just to make sure we're putting in place timescales that are achievable and are realistic. And in some cases, there's other priorities that then overlap with some of these actions, because some of the audits are, as you say, they're older, so they've been superseded by maybe different legislation or service reviews, and therefore the action has to then be incorporated within this review that they're now undertaking, so that can add to the slippage as well. So rather than address the action and then have to go back and do something different, which will change the action, we've built it in, to whatever the current review is. For example, homelessness, it's gone through quite a lengthy review of processes. The audit took place before that service review, so it's about tying in with what the service review would deliver, and that report's going to go forward to the IJB in November. So we're confident that that will be achievable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, questions from Councillor Maguire?
Thank you. Councillor McCluskey touched on some of the points I was going to make regarding staffing, so I won't rehash that. I've got probably two questions overall. So the first one is just 2.6. Within the managing the collection of commercial waste, it says the need to commit to any price increase. Was that agreed as part of the budget, and is there something that can be put in place to make sure that that can be brought either earlier or brought in line with the kind of the financial year to make things a bit easier for that control environment? And my next question was under documenting contractual relationships with commercial waste customers. I was just wondering, first of all, why has the standard form not been used since the pandemic began? And is it not customary that we tend to have all policies online just for transparency within the public realm? And then the final point is just around the cybersecurity training and the kind of deadlines. So first of all, are we on track to meet all the September, October deadlines outlined here in front of us? And second, with the cybersecurity training, I'm aware that this is a huge risk where we all here need to be vigilant, and we also need our staff to be vigilant. So was that achieved with the staff receiving and completing the training in cybersecurity?
Okay, thanks, Councillor McGrath. It's actually very difficult to hear some of the things that you're saying there, so I'll be able to.
Is this any better? It could be the laptop stand that I'm using.
If there's any questions, she'll ask it.
Thanks, Chair. So in relation to the two queries for commercial waste, I wouldn't have the detail to that, Councillor Maguire, but what I can do is contact the corporate director and get a detailed response provided to you on those two areas. Ian Strachan's here today and will be able to respond in the cybersecurity matter if that's acceptable to you.
Of course, thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Sue, convener. So, cybersecurity, firstly, on page 18, it refers to assessments and accreditations. I think that one now is complete as having submitted them, and the PSN certificate came through the other day. In terms of the staff training one, I was going to provide an update, but thanks for your question, Councillor Maguire. We've got approximately 1,620 active users on the corporate network. 1,460 have completed the training, or there's a valid reason for them not having done so. For instance, they're on long-term leave or maternity leave or absence or the like. So that's approximately 89%. The vast majority of those that haven't yet completed, which is approximately 165, are within HSCP, but I'm following that up with the Chief Officer, and I would anticipate that that is closed off by the time the next update comes before the committee. If that assists, I'm happy to take any further questions.
Does that answer all your questions, Councillor McGrath?
Yes, convener, that covered everything that I asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So it's going to get involved with cyber security. Are elected members going to be offered that? Sure.
Well, certainly it's there as a module that elected members can choose to complete, but we weren't going to. Well, yeah, deliberately we didn't obviously mandate, and we couldn't. The elected members would for obvious reasons, but you know it's to be encouraged, even in people's personal lives as well as with their work for the council.
Okay. If there's no further questions, we'll move on to item number 3, the external audit action plans, current actions.
Thanks, Chair. So this is a regular report on external audit action plans. There were no actions due for completion by the 31st of August, and there's one current action being progressed by officers, which is set out at Appendix 1. I will happily answer any questions or obtain an update from relevant officers where required. Thanks, Chair.
Any questions from them?
No.
Okay. In case, we'll move on to agenda. Item number 4 under new business, the National Fraud Initiative Exercise 2022-23 update.
This report is here to provide an update on the current position with regard to the 22-23 NFI exercise. We received a number of matches earlier in the year, and these are being progressed, and an update on the progress at 29th of September for each of the matches in the categories is set out at Appendix 1. We expect further data matches to be released later this year, and I'll update Audit Committee once these additional matches are being received. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Questions?
Yeah, it's just to get an understanding, I suppose, of what public bodies are involved in this exercise. Because suppose if we look at the Appendix 1, there's probably a limited number of public bodies that we are being matched with, but there's far more public bodies if we just look at it in the Scottish context. So who in a sense do we get matched with in terms of data? And I'm presuming that there's lots of data that aren't part of the matching process because there's restrictions on the use of that data.
Thanks for your question, Councillor McCabe. So in terms of it's a wide number, a wide range of public sector bodies. I do have a slide that I can share after today's meeting that sets out in just a table format the vast number of public bodies that do contribute and or are mandated by the Cabinet Office to participate. In terms of Inverclyde, the matches that we get are relating to the data that we submit. So there may be other data sets that we don't submit, or we can't submit because, for example, housing, waiting lists, things like that is now with the registered social landlords. So there are some restrictions. There's also some restrictions for some data that we do hold. And these are the additional data sets that are potentially coming forwards, but there are legal impediments at the moment. But we will be we'll be informed at the end of November whether we will get those additional sets. But I'm happy to circulate that slide that will show the vast number of. I mean, there's pension authorities, the NHS, contribute data sets. Various third party, sort of sector organisations as well. So there's quite a detailed number of organisations, but I'll supply that slide, which hopefully will be helpful.
Yeah. I suppose just to understand, obviously these are matches that we're going to investigate. Will there potentially be data from us that will be others will be investigating?
Through your chair, yes. So what we can get is inquiries through the National Fraud Initiative where they look at two sides. We've got a side A and a side B. So the matches that we get are from side A because it's our data and it's matching with the side B. So what we'll have to do is if we require some information, particularly in relation to pension fund inquiries, we will raise an inquiry through the system to the appointed person at the other data holder, and we will capture all that information, and we'll then, if they supply us with the information, we get lots of ones, for example, payroll, where it looks as if we've got someone working at Inverclyde Council who's also working at another organisation, and it may be that that's then impacting or could have potential to impact their housing benefit claim. So we will endeavour to get that relevant information from the other party that will then allow us to assess whether we need to take action in terms of the application for housing benefit on our side. So it is quite an extensive data warehousing tool, and the company that actually run the algorithm, they're learning every time we do an exercise and we feed back to them. They're constantly refining that algorithm, but we do get a lot of what we call positive matches where it's entirely reasonable for someone to be working and also in receipt of housing benefit. That it's not sophisticated enough to understand that there is at the minimus level. So a lot of them are what we call positive matches, but we certainly endeavour to review our own matches and also provide information where there is a shared match with another authority. So there's quite a lot of work. I know it doesn't seem like that when the report comes forward, but there is quite a lot of work that goes into it.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions from members? Councillor McCluskey.
Thanks, Chair. Just for clarity, Andy, could you just explain the difference between fraud and error and how you determine which is which?
Through the chair. So in terms of error, the National Fraud Initiative is quite clear in terms of if it's an error on the customer's part or if it's a local authority error. For example, they've maybe declared income as part of a housing benefit assessment, but the local authority has failed to take that into account. So we would class that as a local authority error, but where we would then do an investigation, and if it turns out that there's been a false declaration on a change of circumstance, for example, we would then pursue that as a fraud case. Okay.
Thank you.
But just to, I suppose, pursue that further, if we're looking at from a client perspective, there could be circumstances where the client didn't submit information because they didn't know they had to submit that information, and again, that would be a client error. Is that okay?
Through your chair, yes. So there's obviously fraud, but there's different categories of error, the main ones being customer error, as in they didn't realise they had to report a change in circumstance. That can happen a lot. And the other aspect is local authority having the relevant information but not updating their systems properly. Where it's a customer error, we would consider mitigations in terms of the extent of the size of the error, in terms of rebilling, you know, in terms of stopping and reducing benefits going forwards. But we don't get involved in that. That would be for finance to make those detailed adjudications.
Okay. We move on to agenda item number 5, which is the Civil Audit Committee Guidance 2022, update on implementation of improvement action.
Thanks, Chair. So this report is to provide an update for members on the improvement actions that were identified through the recent review of SIPA's updated guidance for audit committees. The current status of the improvement actions is attached to Appendix 1 and shows that good progress has been made in implementing the actions. Happy to take any questions, and Ian's obviously here today as well to support that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate us all for the good progress. So, yeah, thank the officers who support us this and make excellent progress.
Thanks. In terms of the review of the terms of reference for the committee, this sort of impacts the next item on the agenda. Are the terms of reference going to be expanded to make clear that this is where risk sits, that this will be a committee action as a risk committee as well?
Yeah, we need to do that. I mean, principally, be picking up some of the elements highlighted by the updated SIPA guidance. So probably the terms of reference will change a bit, but we need to make sure clearly that it's tailored for Implied's audit committee. So yes, you anticipate risk in there as well, and that's something I'll mention there. I'll pick up as part of the review of the standing audit scheme of administration and scheme of delegation, which ultimately should come to council in December.
Great, thanks.
Right. We move on to agenda item number 6, which is annual report on risk management activity 2022-2023.
Thanks, Chair. So this annual report sets out the areas where the Council continues to focus on risk management activities. Paragraph 4.1 sets out the areas of ongoing focus during 22-23, and through the review of the local code of governance and the annual governance statement, it also recognised the need to review the Council's overall arrangements for risk management. This review is now complete, and a revised risk management strategy is on today's agenda. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Any questions from members? Then move on to agenda item number 7, revised risk management strategy.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, so as Mr. Adam report and Andy just mentioned there, one thing was on our outstanding list to do was to review the risk management strategy. So we've done that, taken it to CMT. We've brought it here, summarised the changes, nothing of substance, so a number of items which I've highlighted there at 4.2, and also to flag that we're in the course of compiling the corporate risk register that will come here in January, and then on to Policy and Resources Committee in February 24, and then going forward, reporting it 6 months to CMT and annually to the Audit Committee and Policy and Resources Committee. But happy to take any questions.
Thanks. Yes, thanks, Ian, for the report. I've got a few questions that you bear with me on it, so maybe I'll just take them one at a time. The first is just around the regularity of reporting to the committee on risk. So the covering report talks about 6 monthly to CMT and annually to the Audit Committee and the P&R Committee. The risk management strategy on page 7, page 60, talks about regular risk management updates provided to the committee, with our risk management annual report being presented to members, and the SIPA guidance talks about regular reporting of risk registers to committees. So I'm just wondering, there's maybe a little bit of a, I don't know if it's an omission or a contradiction here, but it would seem to me that we should be getting risk registers more than just once a year, because there's clearly a distinction drawn in the risk management strategy as drafted between a risk management annual report and regular reporting. So I would be keen to maybe see us receiving risk management reports and the risk register twice a year, and having that in the actual risk management strategy, which would be more reflective of both the SIPA guidance and what's in the strategy versus the covering notes. I'm just wondering if that can be clarified, because I think twice a year seems like a better regularity of reporting than just seeing risk registered once a year, which like would just be the annual report anyway.
You want to take these as you go?
Do you want to do one at a time? That would be, yeah, that would be
But make sure
Yeah.
so, and maybe I my fault not to make clear. So when I talk about the 6 monthly CMT and then Audit Committee and PR at 4.2 report, that's the corporate risk register. Separately, we'll still get the sort of annual risk management update to the Audit Committee. So that's 2 reports. And then separately, what we'll also get, as is currently to the executive decision-making committees, is the risk registers that form part of the CDEPs. And I think that twice a year, they come to the executive committees. So what we were proposing is just the corporate risk register only coming forward annually. If that helps to clarify, but that's something might not meet.
I think that helps. I think that helps to clarify. I think there's a few issues I suppose going on here, which is I think the corporate risk register it feels like it should come to this committee more often than just once a year, especially if there's already a kind of principle of the risk registers and the CDIPs going more frequently to the executive committees. And you know, why not just follow the same regularity of reporting with the corporate risk register? I still think there's maybe a question that I didn't feel was fully addressed in the risk strategy at the moment and this relates back to the previous question, that if we are responsible in this committee for risk, then are the other committees in their standing orders going to make clear that they are responsible for risk? But then that still leaves the question of, well, is it the council as a whole who is then responsible for the overall risk? Because I'd be worried that in terms of managing, as elected members being involved in trying to manage the risk, that it's quite fragmented across the service committees and P&R and the audit committee. And you know, from an elected member point of view, as opposed to the CMT, where do the elected members sort of see it all at once? And I'm not clear where that is at the moment.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose probably I would think the main one for elected members is the corporate risk register, and that's where it's all drawn together at that more strategic level. And it's right, the audit committee has visibility on that, and then P&R is as well in terms of its remit, and full council doesn't seem appropriate for it. And so that's the main one. And then separately, it was felt important that the individual executive decision-making committees had visibility on those risks that were most important, if you like, to their strategic outcomes. And so there is that sort of multi-layered reporting to make sure there's a visibility, and then to make sure, I suppose, the officers ultimately are giving assurance and able to cover off those risks. And then below that, we have the operational reporting is set out in here in terms of what directorates and services are doing, and that helps to inform the corporate risk register. So I'd like to think that, and particularly probably with the changes around the CDIPs, that will get risk out there more. And what we're proposing also, that through the corporate risk group with the new corporate risk advisor role, that operationally we're giving it the weight that it needs. We're making sure that service areas are properly addressing it, because I think we recognise that there's more that we could do or should be doing around that. And so I hope that all of that brought together embeds it in our processes, and in turn gives yourself and others assurance. And it might very well be that after a year we think, or you say, actually some of this needs refined, and maybe what we need to do. I mean, if the committee feels that actually twice you'd like to see the corporate risk register twice yearly, that's absolutely fine, of course, and we'll do that in the same to P&R as well. It might not change a lot, that's what I would say, but that's absolutely fine. But maybe what we also need to do is say, actually, if there are reservations from members, that we undertake to look at it in a year's time as well, and just to see how we are with it. But you know, it's whatever members think is most appropriate. You know.
Yeah, I think maybe others have different views, but I think I would feel more assured by the corporate risk register coming here twice a year and it being more kind of in line with what we're doing with the executive committees.
I think what we should also be looking at here is you know, what other councils do, and also what the Scotland's comfortable with, you know. You could end up with too many reports coming before this committee. You know, that's what I'm concerned about. Too much work for officers bringing stuff here when it's not necessary.
Yeah. So I had a look last night at other West of Scotland councils, and most are twice a year. And the SIPA guidance has a distinction between regular reporting of risk registers and annual reports, which would suggest to me that SIPA would expect a risk committee to be looking at it more than once a year. But
I think it's also muted that other committees are looking at it more twice a year.
But if we are the risk committee, which is what the question I asked earlier about, if we are going to be the committee charged with risk, and if the other committees are just taking an oversight, it's our responsibility to actively look at the risk.
So, have you got other questions?
Yeah, I've got other questions in other areas, but I don't know if people might want, there's any other view on that?
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, I think that's the reasonable suggestion to have it twice a year. I mean, in another life, I've sort of, in a sense, managed reports that went to committees around risk relay committees, and it did tend to be like twice a year we would present it to the lay committee, because things can change during the course of the year. I know Mark's got other things to raise, but I was just going to come in on, I suppose, just the role of elected members. I think it's a very comprehensive document, and elected members are mentioned in a lot of places in here. I just felt that when it comes to Appendix 2, when it's setting out the roles and responsibilities, I know it talks about the council roles and responsibilities of different committees, the Audit Committee. I just think it would be probably useful just to have a section for elected members as those individuals, in terms of what our responsibilities are, making sure that we are aware of risk and attending appropriate training. So I'll leave it with you to look at that.
Yeah.
But I suppose that then leads into my other point about where do elected members feature in the identification of risks. And I think, again, it would be useful that we have regular workshops at the appropriate stage in the cycle for elected members to be in there and engaging with officers and potentially helping identify the risks that we feel from an elected member's perspective that the council faces.
Yeah, no, I mean that would make sense. Certainly. I mean, obviously, there's certainly that role through the committees and the reporting. Then, I guess what I've seen elsewhere is that if elected members were to feel that risks weren't suitably covered in what was coming forward, be it risks identified, be it controls and mitigations and so on, that would feed into that more formal process. But I can certainly see a benefit to something offline, if you like, in terms of workshops and understanding what some of this is and what our approach is. So that's certainly something I think we feel would be a benefit.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Just one final question is just on risk appetite. So the roles and responsibilities on page 11 talks about the risk management strategy will reflect the council's risk appetite and the CMT defining risk appetite. In other places, the risk appetite, there's not a risk appetite statement somewhere in the strategy. And I'm just wondering how the risk appetite is. I couldn't see a risk appetite statement. I'm just wondering how that's reflected in the strategy.
Yeah, I might defer to Andy for that, and I might come in.
Through your chair. So in terms of the risk appetite statement, there's still a piece of work to be done in terms of involvement of elected members in terms of the categories of risk. We have 4 categories of risk. We also have other common areas of risk, and it's about elected members being comfortable with the level of risk. What your tolerance is different to your appetite. So there might be some risk categories where there's no appetite, for risk. And it's about then officers shaping that framework to support the appetite of risk for the council as a whole. But there is a piece of work still to be done on that.
Thanks, Andy. And just would that then find its way into this, do you think, in future years? Is that where it would kind of be located?
Through you, Chair, there will be a reference to risk appetite within the strategy. However, there would be a risk appetite statement, which would be separate to that.
Okay, thank you.
No more questions from members? No, thank you, that will concern.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, sir.
So it can be, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor
Councillor
Dwyer.
Cormack, do you have a question?
Councillor Maguire,
Oh, it's my Councillor Dwyer. Right, okay.
On that one.
Right, thanks. Okay, that concludes the meeting and for still further questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks all, bye.